Before the roar of dinosaurs filled the land, before birds took to the skies and insects began their endless buzz through the trees, Earth was alive, but not in the way we think of life today. This was a time long before the familiar creatures of modern-day nature made their appearance. The Earth we're talking about had no forests or flowers, no grassy plains swaying in the wind. There were no mammals, no birds, no reptiles. In fact, there wasn't even any land to speak of. The Earth was covered mostly by vast, shallow seas, oceans that stretched across the planet's surface, rich with nutrients, sunlight, and potential. And beneath these ancient waters, strange, alien life forms were emerging, creatures so alien to us that they might as well have come from another world entirely. These creatures didn't have bones, no shells for protection. They didn't have the sophisticated senses we associate with life today. Some had multiple eyes, while others had none at all. Some swam gracefully through the waters, others inched along the sea floor. The shapes of these creatures defied all logic, making them seem like they belonged to a dream, or perhaps, a nightmare. For hundreds of millions of years, this was the world that existed. A world ruled not by mammals or dinosaurs, but by creatures that defy the imagination. And even though they are long gone, their legacy still lingers within us all. We owe everything we are to these forgotten giants of the deep, for they are the ancestors of all life that followed, including our own. In this documentary, we will take you on a journey through this strange world. We'll meet the first predators, the first forms of defense, the first senses that allowed creatures to thrive. And perhaps, most importantly, we will discover how life on Earth took its first steps, shaping everything that came after. It's a story of life's beginning, a story that begins with creatures that were unlike anything you could imagine. It was one of the most dramatic moments in Earth's history. A moment that forever changed life as we know it. This moment came to be known as the Cambrian explosion. And despite its name, it wasn't an explosion of fire or violence. It was a rapid burst of life, a biological revolution that reshaped the course of evolution. Around 541 million years ago, Earth saw a sudden rise in complexity. Multicellular life began to diversify rapidly, giving birth to nearly every major group of animals that still exist today. Before this time, life was simple, small, soft, and single-celled. It was the quiet beginning of life as we understand it, with creatures too small to notice and ecosystems too basic to support more complex forms. But then, in the blink of a geological eye, everything changed. The seas began to fill with strange new forms of life. Some creatures grew skeletons, a hard body capable of protecting themselves from predators. Others developed limbs or fins. Eyes appeared, allowing creatures to see the world around them. And the most remarkable part? It all happened in a geological blink of an eye. In just a few million years, life on Earth became vastly more complex. The Cambrian explosion wasn't just a burst of new life forms, it was the foundation of everything that came after. It was the evolutionary spark that would eventually lead to the rise of land animals, birds, and ultimately, human beings. Scientists are still investigating what caused this rapid diversification. Was it the rise of oxygen levels? A genetic breakthrough? Or some other environmental trigger? Whatever the cause, the Cambrian explosion changed the direction of evolution forever. In this time, life learned to adapt in ways we could never have predicted. The rules of life were being rewritten, as new animals took shape and began to rule the seas. But these first creatures didn't have it easy. Life in the Cambrian seas was a battleground. Survival was fierce, and the evolutionary arms race had just begun. As we look back at the Cambrian period, we need to picture Earth as a very different place than the one we know today. The land was barren, no trees or shrubs, no flowers, not a single creature walking across the surface. The oceans, though, were alive, vibrant, and teeming with life. The seas were shallow, warm, and rich with nutrients, creating the perfect environment for early life to flourish. At this time, the oceans were Earth's only habitat. Life existed only in these waters. This was where nature's first experiments in evolution took place. With no land to conquer, life took to the seas, floating in the currents, crawling along the seabed, and darting through the water. There were no coral reefs, no schools of fish, and no kelp forests. Just an endless, surreal collection of strange creatures and shifting ecosystems. In these early seas, life was often soft, fragile, and slow. There were no hard-shelled creatures yet, except for the occasional early mollusk or trilobite. Some creatures swam gracefully through the currents, propelled by little more than the movement of their bodies. Others remained anchored to the seafloor, filtering plankton or grazing on microscopic algae. Every animal in the ocean had its own way of surviving, whether through hunting, hiding, or simply waiting for food to come to them. And yet, in this strange, soft-bodied world, life was undergoing a rapid transformation. As new species emerged, they filled ecological roles and created interdependent relationships. For the first time, the ocean was starting to look like a proper ecosystem, with plants and animals interacting in complex ways. Some creatures even began to develop senses, eyes that allowed them to detect light, movement, and shadows. The Cambrian oceans were not just full of life, they were full of potential. The sea creatures of this time were the first steps toward the complex ecosystems that would one day develop on land. From these humble beginnings, life would continue to evolve and diversify, eventually giving rise to all the creatures that would fill the earth. One of the most successful and enduring life forms to emerge during the Cambrian period were the trilobites. These creatures were among the first arthropods to evolve, and their design would prove to be a winning one. They would dominate the seas for over 270 million years, far longer than the dinosaurs ever would. Trilobites were segmented creatures, with a hard, protective exoskeleton. Their bodies were divided into three main sections: a head, a thorax, and a tail, giving them their characteristic name trilobite, meaning three lobes. They were incredibly diverse, with thousands of species evolving over millions of years, each adapted to a different environment and way of life. The most remarkable feature of trilobites, however, was their eyes. Trilobites were among the first animals to evolve complex compound eyes, with thousands of tiny lenses that gave them a panoramic view of their surroundings. This allowed them to see in all directions, detecting both predators and prey with startling precision. Trilobites played many roles in the Cambrian ecosystem. Some were scavengers, feeding on dead plants and animals. Others were active hunters, using their hard exoskeletons to crush or tear their prey. Some species even swam through the water, using their spiny limbs to propel themselves, while others crawled along the ocean floor, digging into the soft sediment to find food. The diversity and success of trilobites helped shape the early oceans, influencing the course of evolution. Their remains, preserved in rocks all over the world, provide a window into the Cambrian period and the creatures that lived there. The trilobite's legacy lives on today, as one of the earliest and most successful forms of life on Earth. In the Cambrian seas, while trilobites were flourishing, there was one predator that ruled them all: Anomalocaris. This bizarre and terrifying creature was the top predator of its time, a fierce, agile hunter that could reach up to a meter in length, a giant in a world dominated by tiny creatures. Anomalocaris had a segmented body with side flaps that undulated, allowing it to swim through the water with surprising speed and agility. Its head was large, equipped with a circular mouth made up of sharp, hard plates that could easily crush the shells of trilobites and other prey. But what really set it apart were its two long, spiny appendages that jutted from its face, which it used to grab and hold its prey. With large, complex eyes, Anomalocaris was a skilled predator. It likely used its keen vision to spot its prey from a distance, before darting toward them with incredible speed. Once it caught its victim, it would use its claws to hold them in place while it fed. Anomalocaris ruled the Cambrian oceans for millions of years, and its presence forced other species to evolve in response. Prey species became better armored. Some evolved spines, while others began to burrow deeper into the seafloor. The evolution of defense mechanisms was sparked by Anomalocaris, and it set off an arms race between predator and prey that would last for millions of years. Despite its dominance, Anomalocaris eventually faded into extinction, but its legacy as the Cambrian apex predator. One of the most curious creatures to emerge from the Cambrian seas was Hallucigenia, a creature whose name is as strange as its appearance. When scientists first discovered its fossil, they couldn't make sense of it. In fact, Hallucigenia was initially reconstructed upside down, and for years, paleontologists debated what it really looked like. Imagine a creature with a long, slender body, lined with spikes on top, and tiny stilt-like legs underneath, legs that, upon first glance, seemed to serve no clear purpose. Hallucigenia didn't look like anything familiar. Its head, tiny and almost featureless, sat at the back of its body. But despite this odd design, it managed to survive in the Cambrian seas, making its mark on the early ecosystem. This bizarre animal probably crawled along the seafloor, using its spiny body for protection and its thin, fragile legs for movement. Some scientists believe the spines served as armor, while others argue they may have been a form of sensory structure. The truth is, we may never fully understand how Hallucigenia functioned in its environment, but it's a perfect example of the experimental nature of early life. Hallucigenia's unusual design wasn't just a curiosity, it was a testament to nature's willingness to experiment. Evolution was still in its early stages, and the Cambrian period was a time when nature was pushing the limits of what life could be. The weird and wonderful creatures of this period were all part of an ongoing exploration of form, function, and survival, and Hallucigenia stands out as one of the strangest experiments of them all. And then there's Opabinia, another creature that looks like it's straight out of a science fiction film. With its bizarre, five-eyed head and a long, flexible proboscis that extended from its face like a trunk, Opabinia stood as one of the most unusual animals to ever live. This creature lived in the Cambrian seas, swimming close to the ocean floor. It had a soft, finned body and a long tail that helped propel it through the water. But it was the head of Opabinia that truly set it apart from anything we see today. Imagine a creature with 5 eyes, each one mounted in a circular pattern on its head, providing it with a nearly panoramic view of its surroundings. But the real oddity was the proboscis, a long, flexible trunk-like appendage, tipped with a claw-like structure. Opabinia likely used this unusual trunk to grab and manipulate prey, particularly small organisms on the ocean floor. Its backward-facing mouth allowed it to feed on anything it could capture. What's most remarkable about Opabinia is how little we truly understand about its place in the animal kingdom. Its body shows traits of arthropods, but it doesn't fit perfectly into any group we know today. Opabinia's strange design is a powerful reminder that evolution doesn't follow a straight path. This creature doesn't resemble anything in the modern world, but it was a successful product of its time. It thrived in an environment where strange forms of life were flourishing, and it represents the diversity of experimentation that defined the Cambrian period. Opabinia, like so many Cambrian creatures, pushes the boundaries of what we expect life to look like. And in doing so, it helps us understand the vast potential of life on Earth, a potential still unfolding today. One of the most crucial developments in the Cambrian period was the evolution of sight. Vision allowed creatures to perceive their world in a whole new way, fundamentally changing the predator-prey relationship and setting the stage for complex behaviors that would shape the evolution of all life on Earth. Before vision, most creatures navigated the world through touch, vibration, or chemical cues. But once eyes evolved, everything changed. For the first time, animals could detect motion from a distance, making hunting and escaping predators far more efficient. The Cambrian period saw the rise of animals with specialized eyes, from simple light-sensitive spots to complex, compound eyes capable of seeing in full detail. Trilobites, for example, developed compound eyes that could see in multiple directions at once, giving them a panoramic field of view. This ability helped them spot danger or prey quickly. Other creatures, like the early predators, evolved eyes that gave them depth perception and sharper focus, allowing them to become more efficient hunters. Vision created an arms race, predators became faster and smarter, while prey evolved new strategies to evade capture. Some creatures began to develop camouflage or even bioluminescence to blend into their environments or confuse attackers. With sight came strategy, and the balance of life shifted in dramatic ways. The evolution of vision was a pivotal moment in life's history. It didn't just allow animals to see, it changed the very rules of survival, and laid the foundation for complex behaviors that would define life on Earth for millions of years to come. To truly understand the bizarre creatures of the Cambrian period, we must turn to the Burgess Shale, one of the most significant fossil sites in the world. Located in the Canadian Rockies, this site has preserved some of the most detailed and ancient fossils ever discovered. The Burgess Shale is unique because it captures not just the hard parts of animals, like shells and bones, but their soft tissues as well. Most fossils only preserve the hard exoskeletons or bones, but here, entire organisms have been preserved in exquisite detail. From the soft, fleshy bodies of ancient jellyfish to the segmented limbs of arthropods, these fossils offer us a window into a world long lost. The creatures discovered in the Burgess Shale are unlike anything alive today. There were strange, armored predators like Anomalocaris, alongside soft-bodied scavengers and filter feeders that seem to have no modern counterpart. What makes these fossils so special is the way they capture an ecosystem in its entirety, from the bottom-dwelling creatures to the fast-swimming predators. These fossils are not just the remains of individual creatures, they are an entire snapshot of life in the Cambrian oceans. Thanks to the Burgess Shale, we can piece together the relationships between these animals, understanding their behaviors, diets, and even the environments they lived in. Without these fossils, the Cambrian period would remain a mystery. But thanks to this remarkable site, we now have the chance to peer back in time, to witness the incredible diversity of life that existed over 500 million years ago. The Burgess Shale continues to be one of the most important windows into Earth's ancient past, preserving life that we might otherwise never have known. It's a treasure trove of discovery, revealing how life began its long journey from the sea to the land. As the Cambrian seas filled with strange creatures, the evolutionary arms race began to heat up. Animals were no longer just soft-bodied or simple. In response to predators like Anomalocaris, prey species began evolving defenses, and the most common defense? Armor. The first hard-shelled creatures emerged, and their shells became a key to survival. Trilobites, with their thick, calcified exoskeletons, were among the first to evolve such armor. Their segmented bodies provided flexibility and protection in one package. It was the perfect defense against predators. But armor came with a trade-off: weight. These armored creatures were slower, more cumbersome. As a result, they had to evolve new strategies to survive: better digging skills, faster reflexes, or better hiding techniques. The evolutionary pressure for armor was immense, but it required greater muscle strength, smarter movement, and more complex behaviors to compensate for its burdens. This period saw the rise of other armored creatures, such as early mollusks and brachiopods, creatures that lived in the shallows and built shells that protected them from both predators and harsh environments. Armor became the ultimate defense, but it wasn't just about surviving attacks. It also became a way for creatures to deter competitors, intimidate rivals, or even attract mates. The armored lifeforms were not only equipped to defend against predators, but they had also become part of the competitive game of evolution, the early stages of the survival of the fittest. In this world of evolving armor, life learned how to adapt to new threats, new environments, and new opportunities. The arms race between offense and defense had begun, and it would continue for millions of years. In the shallow oceans of the Cambrian period, soft-bodied creatures ruled the seas. But among them, worms became some of the most important and influential life forms of the time. These ancient worms were the architects of the seafloor, burrowing creatures that changed the very makeup of the ocean floor. Worms were some of the first animals to develop the ability to dig into the sediment. This allowed them to access nutrients from the deeper layers of the seafloor and to create complex networks of tunnels that oxygenated the waters and provided new habitats for other creatures. Their burrowing activities, known as bioturbation, reshaped the ocean floor, creating new niches for life. While they were small and simple, worms played a crucial role in the ecology of the Cambrian oceans. They didn't need armor or advanced predation techniques. Instead, they adapted to life by digging deep into the seafloor, where they found food and safety. This made them one of the most successful groups of animals in the Cambrian period. Some worms were scavengers, feeding on organic material buried in the sediment. Others were more active, hunting tiny organisms or filter feeding from the ocean's currents. Whatever their method of feeding, worms were essential to the functioning of the Cambrian ecosystem, cycling nutrients, creating habitats, and influencing the development of future species. Today, worms still play a similar role in marine ecosystems, helping to maintain the health of ocean floors. But their legacy began millions of years ago, when these simple creatures helped pave the way for the evolution of more complex life. Not every creature in the Cambrian oceans needed to chase down its food. Many species took a more passive approach to survival, relying on the ocean's currents to bring them food. These were the filter feeders, animals that simply sat in one place and waited for food to come to them. Filter feeders like sponges, brachiopods, and early tunicates used specialized structures to filter tiny particles from the water. These organisms would draw in water through siphons or open mouths and use feathery appendages or mucus to capture plankton, bacteria, and other microscopic organisms. While filter feeders may not have been the fastest or most aggressive creatures, they played a vital role in the Cambrian ecosystem. By filtering large volumes of water, they helped to clean the oceans and cycle nutrients, making them key players in the web of life. Some filter feeders, like sponges, even provided habitats for other creatures. Small arthropods, worms, and other organisms would often hide within the structure of a sponge or burrow in the sediment beneath it. Filter feeding allowed these creatures to survive in a world full of predators. They didn't have to hunt. Instead, they used the ocean's currents to bring them food. This method of feeding was highly efficient, allowing these animals to thrive in the early oceans while others fought for survival. In today's oceans, filter feeders still dominate in places like coral reefs and deep-sea vents, continuing a role that was set in motion during the Cambrian period. Their quiet, passive approach to survival laid the groundwork for the diversity of marine life that would eventually emerge. As life continued to evolve in the Cambrian seas, some creatures began to build structures that would change the face of the ocean. The first reefs began to form, not from corals, as we might think today, but from the humble beginnings of sponges and early reef-building organisms. These primitive reefs created new habitats for marine life, providing shelter, food, and protection for a variety of organisms. The reefs were made of soft-bodied organisms like sponges, bryozoans, and some of the earliest corals. They were small compared to the massive reefs of today, but their creation marked a monumental step in the development of marine ecosystems. The creation of reefs allowed for the development of more complex ecosystems. Fish and other creatures began to find refuge within these growing structures, using the nooks and crannies for shelter from predators. The reefs themselves became hubs of biodiversity, attracting animals that would eventually evolve into the first complex food chains. As these reefs grew, they also helped stabilize the environment. They prevented erosion, filtered the water, and contributed to the development of nutrient-rich habitats that supported marine life. These first reefs were crucial to the establishment of marine ecosystems, serving as the foundation for the diverse oceanic environments that would follow. Today's coral reefs may look different, but they owe their origins to these early, modest reef builders. The first reefs of the Cambrian period set the stage for the complex underwater structures that would later support entire marine ecosystems, providing life and sustenance for generations of creatures to come. As life in the Cambrian seas continued to diversify, new predators began to emerge. One of the most important groups to evolve during this period were the cephalopods, early relatives of squids, octopuses, and nautiluses. These creatures were equipped with advanced hunting tools, their ability to move swiftly, their intelligence, and their ability to change shape and color. Early cephalopods were far different from the squids and octopuses we know today, but they shared key features: tentacles, a well-developed nervous system, and a unique ability to propel themselves through the water using jet propulsion. These cephalopods were some of the first creatures to truly master active predation. With their ability to move quickly, change direction on a dime, and use their tentacles to capture prey, they were able to become highly effective hunters. Some cephalopods had primitive shells that provided buoyancy and protection, while others evolved to be soft-bodied and more agile, relying on their speed and dexterity to outmaneuver their prey. Their intelligence set them apart from other creatures of the Cambrian seas. Cephalopods developed complex nervous systems that allowed them to learn, remember, and adapt to their environment in ways that other animals could not. As they evolved, cephalopods would play a central role in the ocean's food webs, becoming key predators in many marine ecosystems. And though they no longer dominate the seas in the same way they once did, their legacy continues in the cephalopods of today, creatures that continue to use their intelligence, agility, and specialized anatomy to survive in the ever-changing world of the oceans. As life in the Cambrian oceans became more complex, one trend began to emerge: gigantism. Many species during this period grew to sizes unimaginable by modern standards. This phenomenon wasn't just about size for the sake of size. It was a strategic response to the environment, an evolutionary answer to the pressures of predation, competition, and survival. Gigantism provided many advantages. Larger bodies could house more organs and more energy, making it easier for these creatures to survive long periods without food. Bigger animals were also harder to eat; they became too large for smaller predators to threaten. And in a world full of tiny, vulnerable prey, becoming larger could be a key to dominance. Some of the earliest examples of gigantism include Anomalocaris, the Cambrian apex predator, and Hallucigenia, whose bizarre body structure made it nearly impossible to be preyed upon by smaller animals. Even the trilobites, which were generally smaller, evolved into larger and more resilient species to meet the growing threats from predators. Gigantism also had its downsides, though. Larger creatures needed more food, more space, and more resources to survive. And as life forms grew, they also had to evolve new ways of dealing with environmental challenges, like maintaining buoyancy or dealing with oxygen limitations. But for those who succeeded, gigantism was a game-changer. It allowed animals to dominate their environments in ways smaller creatures could not. And though the age of giant marine creatures eventually gave way to smaller, faster animals, gigantism would continue to be a defining feature in the evolutionary history of life on Earth. In the Cambrian period, one of the most significant developments was the evolution of the brain, the central organ that would eventually allow creatures to think, process information, and react to their environment in increasingly sophisticated ways. For the first time, organisms were developing not just simple nerve cords or ganglia, collections of nerve cells, but actual primitive brains. These early brains allowed animals to process sensory information, coordinate movement, and respond to environmental cues more effectively than ever before. This was a game-changer in the world of survival. It allowed predators to track and hunt prey with greater efficiency, while prey could better evade or escape predators. Simple behaviors evolved into more complex ones. Early forms of learning, memory, and even social behaviors began to emerge. Creatures like the cephalopods, with their highly developed nervous systems, are a prime example of this shift. Their brains allowed them to solve problems, adapt to new environments, and use their environment to their advantage. The first steps toward intelligence were being taken. As life progressed, the development of the brain would lead to even more complex behaviors, from communication to the development of strategies for hunting and survival. But the Cambrian period marks the beginning of that long journey toward greater intelligence, setting the stage for the advanced nervous systems found in today's animals, including ourselves. The Cambrian period was an era of fierce competition, and nowhere was this more apparent than in the predator-prey relationship. The development of new hunting strategies and defensive mechanisms led to a rapid escalation of evolutionary arms races. As predators like Anomalocaris became more efficient, their prey evolved new defenses to survive. Thickened shells, sharper spines, and the ability to burrow deep into the ocean floor became essential tools for survival. Meanwhile, predators evolved new ways to overcome these defenses. Larger jaws, sharper claws, and more sophisticated hunting strategies allowed them to pierce through the armor of their prey or track them down with greater precision. This constant back and forth, predators getting better at hunting and prey getting better at hiding or defending, created a dynamic ecosystem where each new evolution led to new challenges, and new strategies emerged in response. It was an evolutionary battle like no other, where only the fittest survived. And this pattern, the predator-prey arms race, would continue for millions of years, shaping the course of evolution for all life on Earth. In the darkness of the Cambrian oceans, one of the most fascinating adaptations emerged: bioluminescence. The ability to produce light wasn't just a quirky trick, it was a vital survival tool. Creatures like dinoflagellates and early bioluminescent organisms evolved the ability to glow in the dark. Some used this light to attract mates, others to lure prey, and still others to confuse or ward off predators. It was nature's version of special effects, and it worked incredibly well. Bioluminescence allowed organisms to thrive in the murky depths of the Cambrian oceans, where light from the surface could barely penetrate. In this dark world, creatures used light to communicate, hunt, and protect themselves. Today, bioluminescence is still used by many marine creatures, from glowing jellyfish to deep-sea fish. But its origins can be traced back to this ancient time, when evolution first discovered the power of light. The Cambrian period wasn't just a time of individual creatures evolving new traits, it was the birth of true ecosystems. These early ecosystems laid the foundation for the complex networks of life that would follow, with interconnected food webs and roles for every species in the community. In the oceans, life began to form more intricate relationships. Filter feeders like sponges and brachiopods provided food for predators, while scavengers like trilobites cleaned up the remains of dead organisms. Creatures evolved to occupy every available niche, from the bottom-dwelling worms and arthropods to the fast-swimming predators. This period also marked the emergence of symbiotic relationships, where different species lived together in mutually beneficial ways. Some creatures relied on others for protection or food, while others formed partnerships to help each other survive in a hostile environment. Life was still fragile, and many species were constantly vying for resources. But through these early ecosystems, life learned how to survive, thrive, and adapt. The intricate food webs that would come to define life on Earth were starting to form, with complex relationships between prey and predator, scavenger and filter feeder. These early ecosystems were the first true communities of life on Earth. From them, all ecosystems would eventually grow, from the lush forests to the vast grasslands. But it all began in the Cambrian seas, where life learned to work together and evolve in harmony. As life in the Cambrian seas reached its peak, a sudden and catastrophic event changed everything. A mass extinction event swept across the planet, wiping out many of the species that had dominated the oceans. But what caused this mass extinction? The exact reasons remain a mystery, but scientists believe it could have been triggered by a combination of factors, including climate change, volcanic activity, and changes in ocean chemistry. Oxygen levels in the seas may have fluctuated, causing widespread die-offs, or changes in the ocean's nutrient cycles may have destabilized ecosystems. What we do know is that the Cambrian period ended in a wave of extinctions that reshaped life on Earth. The sudden loss of so many species opened the door for new animals to evolve and fill the ecological gaps left behind. However, this extinction wasn't just a tragedy. It was also an opportunity. The animals that survived the event would go on to evolve into new forms, occupying new ecological niches. Life on Earth would continue to evolve, but with a new cast of characters. The Cambrian mass extinction marked the end of an era. But from its ashes, life would rise again, and the story of Earth's evolution would continue to unfold, leading to the rise of the first fish, the first land animals, and eventually, the dinosaurs. As the Cambrian period came to a close, a new chapter began. The Ordovician period dawned around 485 million years ago, and with it came new life forms, new ecosystems, and new challenges. The Ordovician oceans were dominated by early vertebrates, such as jawless fish. These creatures were among the first animals to develop internal skeletons, marking a major step in the evolution of complex life. During this period, marine ecosystems continued to evolve, with the first coral reefs beginning to form. The oceans were teeming with life, from the earliest fish to giant predatory arthropods. Life on Earth was rapidly diversifying, and the seas were a battleground for survival. But the Ordovician period would not last forever. Just as life had exploded during the Cambrian, it would soon face another extinction event. Yet, during its time, the Ordovician was a thriving age for marine life, one that set the stage for the evolution of land animals. This period also saw the rise of the first true reefs, created by corals and other organisms, which would provide the foundation for the complex ecosystems that would one day evolve on land. One of the most important evolutionary developments in the Ordovician period was the rise of the jawless fish, some of the first vertebrates to roam the seas. These creatures were simple but incredibly important. They were the ancestors of all modern vertebrates, from fish to mammals, including humans. Jawless fish were equipped with cartilage skeletons and were often small and eel-like, lacking the powerful jaws that would eventually evolve in other fish. Instead, they used their mouths to suction up food, feeding on plankton and small organisms. While they may seem primitive by today's standards, jawless fish were an important stepping stone in vertebrate evolution. They had internal skeletons, a major advancement over the soft bodies of invertebrates, and they provided the foundation for the more advanced fish that would follow. These early fish lived in the oceans, swimming through the nutrient-rich waters and feeding on microscopic organisms. As the oceans continued to evolve, so did these fish, eventually leading to the development of more complex forms with jaws, fins, and other advanced features that would dominate the seas for millions of years. The rise of jawless fish marked the beginning of the vertebrate age, setting the stage for the evolution of the first true fish, and eventually, the first animals to leave the oceans and venture onto land. As the Ordovician period continued, new and bizarre creatures began to emerge. One of the most fascinating was the graptolite, a small, colonial organism that lived in the oceans and played a key role in the early marine ecosystems. Graptolites were soft-bodied creatures that formed colonies and were often found floating in the open water. These colonies were made up of tiny, interconnected individuals, each of which had its own role in the community. Some graptolites were planktonic, drifting in the ocean's currents, while others were benthic, living on the seafloor. Graptolites are particularly important because they are often used by paleontologists to date the rocks in which they are found. Their fossilized remains help scientists understand the timeline of Earth's early life and the changes that took place during the Ordovician period. These fascinating creatures are also one of the earliest examples of complex colonial life. By working together in large groups, graptolites were able to thrive in the oceans and become a key part of the marine food web. Although graptolites went extinct long ago, their fossils are still used as valuable tools in understanding the early history of life on Earth. They remind us of the strange, interconnected life forms that once dominated the seas. The oceans of the Ordovician period were home to some of the largest, most terrifying creatures of their time. One of the most impressive and fearsome was the Eurypterid, also known as the sea scorpion. These giant arthropods could grow up to 10 feet long, making them the largest predators in the sea at the time. Their long, spiny bodies were equipped with claws, used for capturing and immobilizing prey. Some species had sharp pincers, while others were equipped with specialized hunting tools. Sea scorpions were among the first truly massive predators to emerge in Earth's oceans. They were able to hunt a wide variety of prey, from smaller arthropods to soft-bodied animals. Their size and strength made them a dominant force in the marine food chain. Eurypterids were highly adaptable, and they evolved a variety of body shapes and hunting strategies. Some were swimmers, while others were more sedentary, waiting for prey to come to them. They lived in shallow waters, likely hunting around reefs or in brackish lagoons. Despite their impressive size and power, sea scorpions eventually went extinct. But their legacy lives on in the modern world's arthropods and marine predators, whose hunting strategies and physical designs can trace their lineage back to these early ocean giants. As life flourished in the oceans, another major transition was taking place, one that would change the course of evolution forever. The first plants were starting to move onto land. This was a monumental shift in Earth's history. For billions of years, life had existed solely in the oceans, but now, plants began to colonize the land, turning dry soil into an environment capable of supporting life. These early plants were small and simple, resembling modern mosses and liverworts. They had no roots, no vascular systems, and no leaves. Instead, they absorbed water directly through their cell walls, and their reproductive processes were still tied to water. But despite their simplicity, these plants changed everything. They began to trap carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, slowly altering the atmosphere and paving the way for future life forms. These first plants also began to form the foundation of ecosystems on land, providing food and shelter for other species. Over time, plants would evolve more complex structures, developing roots to anchor themselves in the soil and vascular systems to move water and nutrients. These changes would eventually. As plants began to take root on the land, they weren't alone for long. Slowly, the first land animals began to make their appearance. These early creatures were small, likely arthropods, that crawled across the damp ground, feeding on plant matter and insects. One of the first land-dwelling animals was Pterygotus, an ancient arthropod with an impressive set of pincers that likely fed on other small animals, including primitive plants and insects. These early land creatures faced a whole new set of challenges, from the drying effects of the sun to the need for new ways to breathe outside the water. What these early animals had to their advantage was their ability to thrive in the new environments created by plants. As plants colonized the land, they created new habitats and food sources, providing an opportunity for these animals to evolve and diversify. In fact, some of the first land animals were the ancestors of modern insects. Over millions of years, insects would evolve to become the dominant land animals, creating a new chapter in the story of life on Earth. The first steps on land may have been tentative, but they were vital. These animals began the long process of adapting to an entirely new way of life, paving the way for the evolution of reptiles, birds, and mammals. Meanwhile, life in the oceans was evolving into new and exciting forms. Fish, the first vertebrates, began to dominate the seas, marking a significant turning point in the history of life on Earth. The first fish were jawless creatures, like ostracoderms, which had cartilaginous bodies and no true jaws. These early fish were filter feeders, using their primitive mouths to sift through water for plankton and other tiny organisms. They were the ancestors of the modern vertebrates that would eventually evolve into sharks, bony fish, and even land-dwelling animals. With time, fish began to evolve jaws, an evolutionary leap that would change the way they interacted with the world. Jaws allowed fish to capture larger prey, increasing their efficiency as hunters and helping them to thrive in a variety of marine ecosystems. In addition to their jaws, fish began to develop fins, which gave them increased mobility and the ability to explore a wider range of habitats. They were able to swim more efficiently, chase down prey, and avoid predators with greater success. The rise of fish marked the beginning of a new era in Earth's oceans. Fish would eventually evolve into a vast diversity of species, many of which would dominate the seas for hundreds of millions of years, and they would serve as the ancestors of all vertebrates, including ourselves. As life continued to adapt and thrive on land, the next great evolutionary leap took place, the emergence of the first forests. These forests were not like the towering trees and vast woodlands we have today, but were instead made up of low-growing plants like lycopods and ferns, along with early seed plants that began to spread across the land. The arrival of forests had a profound impact on the planet. For the first time, large amounts of oxygen were being released into the atmosphere in significant quantities. As these plants photosynthesized, they began to transform the environment, not only by providing food and shelter to emerging land animals, but by dramatically altering the climate and atmosphere. These early forests were not just beautiful landscapes. They played an essential role in stabilizing the climate, controlling the amount of carbon dioxide in the air, and shaping the evolution of all life forms, both plant and animal. As plants began to dominate the land, they created ecosystems that would support increasingly complex life forms. The forests became home to a variety of small, terrestrial animals, including the first amphibians and insects. They also provided the raw materials for the evolution of later generations of animals that would come to occupy these forests for millions of years. The rise of forests marked a critical step in the development of life on Earth, setting the stage for the evolution of the complex terrestrial ecosystems that would follow. With the development of forests, a new challenge arose: the need for animals to adapt to land, and specifically, to a life outside the water. Amphibians were among the first vertebrates to conquer the land, evolving from fish that had adapted to life in shallow water. The first amphibians were primitive creatures that still relied on water for reproduction. Their skin, although more resistant to desiccation than their fish ancestors, still needed to remain moist to facilitate gas exchange. These animals, like Ichthyostoga and Acanthostoga, began to venture out of the water, using their fins to crawl along the muddy shores of ancient rivers and lakes. Amphibians were the bridge between aquatic and terrestrial life. Their bodies were adapted to both environments, but they still required water to reproduce and keep their skin moist. Some amphibians ventured out of the water to catch insects or small invertebrates, while others used the dense forests as shelters from larger predators. The evolution of amphibians allowed for the colonization of land by vertebrates, and it set the stage for the eventual rise of reptiles, which would fully adapt to life on land. Amphibians were the pioneers of terrestrial life, and their legacy would shape the evolution of all land-dwelling animals. As amphibians made their way onto land, another group of vertebrates was emerging, the reptiles. Unlike amphibians, reptiles were fully adapted to life on land, with thick, scaly skin that prevented water loss and allowed them to survive in dry environments. Reptiles also evolved the first fully waterproof eggs, which allowed them to reproduce away from water. These adaptations allowed reptiles to dominate the land, free from the constraints of moist environments that amphibians still needed to survive. The first reptiles were relatively small, but over time, they evolved into the large, diverse group of animals we now associate with the word reptile. From small, early species like Hylonomus to the massive, ancient dinosaurs, reptiles became the dominant land animals for millions of years. One of the key innovations in reptiles was the amniotic egg. This egg was covered in a leathery or hard shell that provided a protective environment for the developing embryo. Unlike amphibians, which laid their eggs in water, reptiles were now able to lay their eggs on land, opening up vast new territories for them to colonize. The rise of reptiles marked the beginning of an age of terrestrial dominance. It allowed for the development of ecosystems on land, where reptiles would eventually evolve into the dinosaurs and, later, birds and mammals. Their success on land laid the foundation for the complex ecosystems we see today. With the rise of reptiles, the Earth was entering a new era, the age of dinosaurs. This age would span millions of years, and during this time, dinosaurs would become the dominant life forms on land. But their story didn't start with the massive giants we often think of today. Instead, dinosaurs started small, evolving from earlier reptiles and gradually becoming the most diverse and successful group of animals Earth has ever known. Dinosaurs first appeared in the late Triassic period, about 230 million years ago. They evolved from small, bipedal reptiles that were more like lizards than the enormous creatures we associate with the term dinosaur. Over time, they diversified into a wide variety of shapes and sizes, from the herbivorous Stegosaurus to the terrifying carnivores like Tyrannosaurus rex. The rise of dinosaurs fundamentally reshaped life on Earth. With their size, strength, and variety, they filled ecological roles across the land, from apex predators to small, nimble herbivores. Their dominance lasted for over 160 million years, a reign that only ended with the mysterious mass extinction event that wiped them out. But the legacy of dinosaurs didn't end with their extinction. Birds, which evolved from small, feathered dinosaurs, are their direct descendants, and many of the traits that made dinosaurs successful continue to influence life today. While dinosaurs ruled the land, another major group of vertebrates was quietly evolving: mammals. Unlike reptiles, mammals had several key adaptations that would eventually allow them to dominate the Earth after the dinosaurs' extinction. The first mammals were small, nocturnal creatures that lived in the shadows of the great reptiles. They were warm-blooded, had hair or fur, and were able to nurse their young with milk, a crucial adaptation that allowed them to thrive in cooler environments, where reptiles could not. These early mammals were relatively insignificant in the grand scheme of things, living in the shadow of dinosaurs for millions of years. But they had one major advantage: adaptability. Over time, mammals evolved to fill various ecological niches, developing into creatures as diverse as whales, elephants, and bats. It wasn't until the dinosaurs' extinction, about 66 million years ago, that mammals truly began to flourish and diversify. The absence of dinosaurs allowed mammals to grow in size and number, eventually leading to the rise of primates and, eventually, humans. The first mammals may have been small and unremarkable, but they would go on to play a central role in the story of life on Earth. Their success is a testament to the power of evolution to adapt to changing environments and fill new ecological roles. After the dinosaurs' extinction, a new group of creatures began to fill the skies, the birds. Birds evolved from small, feathered dinosaurs, and while they share a common ancestor with the ancient reptiles, they developed several unique features that allowed them to conquer the air. One of the most significant adaptations in birds was the development of flight. Flight allowed birds to access new environments, escape predators, and hunt for food in ways that no other animal could. Their wings, hollow bones, and specialized respiratory systems made them highly efficient flyers, and their beaks evolved to suit a variety of diets. Birds quickly diversified into a wide range of species, from the predatory eagles to the scavenging vultures and the tiny, delicate hummingbirds. They adapted to life on land, in the air, and even in the water, with species like penguins and puffins mastering the art of swimming. Birds were the true successors to the dinosaurs, continuing their legacy of flight, agility, and adaptability. Today, birds are found in every corner of the world, from the Arctic to the tropics, and they represent one of the most successful evolutionary radiations in Earth's history. The success of birds can be traced back to their dinosaur ancestors, whose adaptations paved the way for the modern birds we see today. After the dinosaurs' extinction, a new group of creatures began to fill the skies, the birds. Birds evolved from small, feathered dinosaurs, and while they share a common ancestor with the ancient reptiles, they developed several unique features that allowed them to conquer the air. The rise of flowering plants, or angiosperms, around 130 million years ago marked another monumental shift in Earth's ecosystems. Flowering plants were able to reproduce more efficiently than earlier plants, and their flowers attracted pollinators, allowing them to spread quickly and widely. These plants were incredibly diverse, producing fruits, seeds, and flowers, which offered new ways to attract animals and ensure their reproduction. They also played a key role in the development of new ecosystems, providing food and shelter for a variety of animals, from insects to larger herbivores. Flowering plants evolved into some of the most important species in the world, providing food for herbivores, shelter for other creatures, and creating the basis for entire ecosystems. Their fruits provided energy for animals, while their seeds were spread across vast distances, helping to establish new plant populations. The rise of flowering plants also coincided with the evolution of bees and other pollinators, creating a mutually beneficial relationship between plants and animals. As plants adapted to attract specific pollinators, they created new opportunities for animals to evolve and diversify. Today, flowering plants are the dominant plant group on Earth, making up around 90% of all plant species. Their success is a testament to the power of evolution to create new forms of life that interact with one another in complex and dynamic ways. Earth's history has been shaped not only by the evolution of life, but also by dramatic changes in its climate. One of the most significant events in Earth's history was the series of ice ages, during which large parts of the planet were covered by glaciers, transforming ecosystems and forcing animals to adapt to harsh, cold environments. The first ice ages began around 2.4 billion years ago, but the most recent ice age, which started about 2.5 million years ago, was the most significant in shaping modern ecosystems. These ice ages created vast glaciers that stretched across continents, transforming landscapes and influencing the evolution of species. As the ice sheets advanced and retreated, species had to adapt to the changing environment. Some animals, like woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats, evolved to live in the cold tundra, developing thick fur and large bodies to withstand the freezing temperatures. At the same time, other animals adapted by moving to warmer regions or evolving new survival strategies. The ice ages were a time of survival and extinction, and many species that could not adapt were wiped out. But for those that survived, the ice ages also created opportunities for new species to emerge and evolve. The ice ages may have seemed like a time of hardship and loss, but they also played a crucial role in shaping the diversity of life on Earth. From the rise of mammals to the evolution of humans, the Ice Ages were pivotal in the ongoing story of life on our planet. With the extinction of the dinosaurs around 66 million years ago, the world underwent a dramatic shift. The Age of Mammals began, and mammals began to fill the ecological roles that had been vacated by the dinosaurs. The first mammals that emerged after the dinosaurs were small and unremarkable, but they were incredibly adaptable. During this time, mammals began to evolve into a wide range of species, from small, nocturnal creatures to massive, herbivorous giants like mammoths and mastodons. The mammal family tree branched out into new directions, with the rise of primates, marsupials, and even early humans. Mammals quickly became the dominant group of animals on Earth, filling ecosystems with diverse species that ranged from tiny rodents to the massive blue whales that rule the oceans today. Mammals' adaptability, warm-bloodedness, and ability to care for their young gave them a major advantage in the changing world. As mammals evolved, they also began to occupy new environments. Some mammals took to the skies, evolving into bats. Others took to the oceans, becoming whales and dolphins, while some mammals remained on land, evolving into large predators and herbivores. The Age of Mammals was a time of rapid evolution, as mammals began to dominate Earth's ecosystems in ways that the dinosaurs never could. It was also the beginning of the rise of humans, the most successful and adaptive mammals of all. While the Age of Mammals was unfolding, another important evolutionary chapter was taking place, the rise of humans. The story of our ancestors begins with early primates, small, tree-dwelling mammals that evolved in the forests of what is now Africa. These primates were the ancestors of all modern humans, apes, and monkeys. The first primates were small, nocturnal creatures that fed on fruits, insects, and leaves. Over millions of years, some of these primates began to adapt to new environments, with changes in their diet, behavior, and physical features. One of the key evolutionary steps in our human ancestors was the development of bipedalism, the ability to walk on two legs. Early primates and their descendants evolved this adaptation as they began to spend more time on the ground, opening up new opportunities for mobility and survival. By around 6 million years ago, the first true human ancestors, such as Australopithecus, began to evolve in Africa. These early hominids had larger brains and more complex social structures, setting the stage for the eventual emergence of Homo sapiens, our own species. The rise of human ancestors represents a critical point in Earth's evolutionary story. From small, tree-dwelling creatures to the complex, intelligent beings we are today, humans have undergone dramatic evolutionary changes, each step reshaping the course of life on Earth. As humans evolved, they faced a rapidly changing world. The Ice Ages, which had shaped the evolution of many species, also played a significant role in the development of human civilization. As glaciers advanced and retreated, early humans were forced to adapt to new environments, climates, and challenges. The harsh conditions of the Ice Ages required humans to develop new tools, technologies, and social structures to survive. Early humans used fire for warmth, built shelters for protection, and hunted large game like mammoths for food. The rise of these technological innovations allowed humans to thrive in even the coldest and most challenging environments. As the Ice Ages ended and the climate began to warm, human societies began to grow more complex. Early agriculture emerged, allowing humans to settle in one place and form permanent communities. The development of farming led to the rise of cities, the growth of trade, and the eventual creation of civilizations. The Ice Ages were pivotal in the history of humanity. The challenges of survival during this time pushed early humans to develop tools, technology, and social behaviors that would shape the development of modern civilization. The transition from hunting and gathering to farming, known as the Agricultural Revolution, was one of the most significant events in human history. This revolution began around 12,000 years ago, when early humans began to domesticate plants and animals for food. The rise of agriculture fundamentally altered human society. Instead of constantly moving in search of food, humans began to settle in one place, cultivating crops like wheat, rice, and barley. They also domesticated animals like cows, goats, and sheep, providing a steady source of meat, milk, and labor. This shift to agriculture allowed human populations to grow exponentially. Surplus food led to the development of cities and permanent settlements, creating opportunities for trade, cultural exchange, and the division of labor. With the rise of agriculture, humans were no longer solely dependent on hunting and gathering for survival. The agricultural revolution also led to the rise of early civilizations, including those in Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and the Indus Valley. These civilizations developed writing, mathematics, and complex social structures, marking the beginning of recorded history and the rise of powerful empires. Agriculture changed the course of human evolution, making modern civilization possible. The impact of this revolution is still felt today in the way we produce food and the structure of human societies. With the rise of agriculture, the next major step in human evolution was the creation of cities. These early urban centers became the focal points of human life, bringing together people from all walks of life and fostering the development of culture, technology, and governance. Cities like Ur, Babylon, and Thebes became hubs of commerce, education, and innovation. They were centers of power, where kings and rulers exerted control over vast territories and populations. The growth of cities allowed for the specialization of labor, as people began to focus on specific trades, crafts, and services. Trade networks also developed as cities expanded, allowing people to exchange goods, ideas, and technologies across vast distances. Trade routes like the Silk Road connected the east to the west, facilitating the movement of spices, silk, and precious metals. This exchange of goods helped spread knowledge, culture, and religion across the ancient world. Cities were the birthplace of many of the greatest advancements in human history. From the development of writing and mathematics to the rise of art and architecture, cities provided the infrastructure for the growth of human civilization. They were the stage upon which the drama of history played out. The rise of cities and trade networks laid the foundation for the modern world, shaping the course of human development and creating a global interconnectedness that persists to this day. One of the most revolutionary advancements of early civilizations was the development of writing. Writing allowed humans to record and preserve information, marking the beginning of recorded history. The earliest forms of writing were used primarily for practical purposes, such as keeping track of trade, inventories, and laws. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians developed cuneiform writing around 3500 BCE, which involved pressing wedge-shaped symbols into clay tablets. In Egypt, hieroglyphics emerged as a way to record religious and governmental affairs. Writing had an enormous impact on human civilization. It allowed for the creation of legal codes, religious texts, and historical records. The ability to communicate across time and space transformed how societies governed themselves, how knowledge was transmitted, and how cultures preserved their histories. The development of writing also enabled the rise of bureaucracy. Governments could now keep records of taxes, land ownership, and military campaigns. Religious institutions were able to pass down sacred texts, ensuring the continuity of cultural traditions. In essence, writing made civilization possible. It allowed for the development of literature, science, philosophy, and law, all of which laid the foundation for the modern world. With the rise of cities and trade came the rise of empires. The creation of powerful, centralized states allowed rulers to exert control over vast territories, and empires became the dominant political and military force in the ancient world. The Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, and the Mongol Empire were just a few examples of the powerful empires that shaped history. These empires were able to unify large swaths of territory under a single ruler, allowing for the spread of culture, technology, and religion across vast distances. Empires were not just political entities. They were engines of cultural exchange. Through conquest, trade, and diplomacy, empires spread ideas, inventions, and innovations. The Roman Empire, for example, spread Greek philosophy, engineering, and law throughout Europe, while the Mongol Empire helped connect the East and West, facilitating the exchange of knowledge and goods. Empires were also responsible for the development of major technological advancements, including roads, aqueducts, and communication networks. These innovations made it easier for people to travel, trade, and communicate, fostering the growth of cities and increasing the complexity of society. The rise of empires fundamentally changed the course of human history, creating powerful legacies that continue to shape the world today. In the 15th century, a new chapter in world history began, the Age of Exploration. Fueled by curiosity, ambition, and the desire for wealth, explorers from Europe set out to chart unknown lands, establish trade routes, and expand their empires. Figures like Christopher Columbus, Ferdinand Magellan, and Vasco da Gama changed the world by opening new frontiers and connecting continents that had been isolated for centuries. These explorers found new lands and created sea routes that linked Europe to Africa, Asia, and the Americas. The Age of Exploration not only altered the course of human history but also reshaped the global economy. The exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures between the Old World and the New World gave rise to the Columbian Exchange, which brought new crops, animals, and technologies to both hemispheres. But the Age of Exploration also had darker consequences. The colonization of new lands led to the exploitation of indigenous peoples and the transatlantic slave trade, which forever altered the social and cultural fabric of the world. Nevertheless, the Age of Exploration was a turning point in history, laying the groundwork for the modern globalized world. It changed the way people thought about the world, and opened up new possibilities for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. In the late 18th century, the world underwent one of the most significant transformations in human history, the Industrial Revolution. This period marked the transition from agrarian economies to industrialized societies, fueled by advancements in technology and manufacturing. The Industrial Revolution began in Britain, where the invention of the steam engine by James Watt revolutionized transportation and manufacturing. Factories sprouted up, producing goods more quickly and cheaply than ever before. The rise of mechanized production allowed for mass production of goods, changing the economy and society. Along with technological innovations, the Industrial Revolution sparked a wave of urbanization. People moved from rural areas to cities in search of work, creating crowded, often unsanitary living conditions. This rapid growth of cities brought with it new social challenges, including labor exploitation and poor working conditions. But the Industrial Revolution also brought about significant improvements in standards of living. It led to the development of new industries, the rise of the middle class, and advancements in transportation, communication, and medicine. The modern world, as we know it, was built upon the innovations of this period. The Industrial Revolution laid the foundation for the technological age we live in today, and it continues to influence the way we live, work, and interact with the world. As we look back over the course of Earth's incredible history, from the dawn of life in the Cambrian seas to the rise of civilizations and the modern technological age, we see that each chapter is interconnected. The story of life on Earth is a story of adaptation, survival, and evolution, a story shaped by countless creatures, from the smallest microbes to the largest mammals. The journey from single-celled organisms to complex societies is one of triumphs, struggles, and incredible transformations. And although many of these creatures are no longer with us, their legacy continues to influence the world we live in today. Every living being, from the tiniest insect to the tallest tree, carries within it the DNA of countless generations that came before. We've explored the beginnings of life, the rise of dinosaurs, the age of mammals, the spread of humans across the globe, and the technological marvels that shape our world today. But the story doesn't end here. The future of life on Earth is still being written, and it is in our hands. As we continue to explore, create, and innovate, we are also shaping the world for future generations. Just as the ancient creatures of the Cambrian period paved the way for the life forms that followed, we too are part of an ongoing evolutionary story that will leave its mark on the planet for millennia to come. The question now is, what will our legacy be? And what role will we play in the next chapter of Earth's remarkable story? The future is ours to write, and it begins now. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through time. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more. Because the story of life on Earth is far from over, and there are many more chapters to come.